Studying for step one, I hated the fact that there were no videos on YouTube that talked about UWorld. And UWorld is the biggest resource that everyone uses about step one, and yet there were no videos about anyone talking about their UWorld experience or the scores they were getting and how to improve those scores, how to get better. And so that's why I made this channel. If I didn't see something, why not create it? So here it is. In this video, I go over my UWorld scores. I go over my first 10 UWorld sections, my last 10 UWorld sections. I talk about how to improve. I talk about my percentile, and I talk about ultimately, hopefully giving you a better idea into how to improve your score. All right, so let's just get straight into it. I'm going to go over my UWorld sections, and I'm going to go over the scores I got, the overall percentile I got, and the whole point of this, again, is to purely increase transparency, because studying for step one is so alienating. Studying for step one is scary as shit. Studying for step one is tough, right? So I want to put this out there so you all know, one, we're all going through this together, and two, how to improve your scores, because this was something that gave me a lot of anxiety, and I hated the fact that there was nothing on YouTube showing like, does everyone struggle this much at the beginning? Or like, oh my God, why is this so hard? Is it supposed to be this hard? How do I get better? And then there was nothing on YouTube that also showed like, oh, this is how you get better. So that's what this video is for. Again, disclaimer, this is all my personal data. This is based on what I did in UWorld, what I found to be effective. And so again, don't assume that this is the end all be all for everything in UWorld. So with that being said, here were my stats. So I did one pass of UWorld, and I did around 2,800 questions, which is the number of questions that existed in UWorld when I did it. Of those, I got 2,259 correct, and I got 622 incorrect. So I got around 78% right. I did all of those questions under time conditions. So I did all of them under 40 question blocks with 60 minutes on the clock, right? That's pretty much what step one is. It's 8 of those, I believe. Or is it 7? It's 7 of those. Step 2 is 8. But the point is it's 7 of those. And you'll see that I got about 78% correct overall, which translated to 85th percentile. Now, the way I want to approach this presentation, and I'm going to do a much more detailed presentation in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But what I want to do for this video is I'm going to take the average of my first 10 scores and then the average of my last 10 scores, basically 10 UWorld blocks I did at the very beginning and the 10 UWorld blocks I did at the very end, and we'll analyze those two and see what worked and what didn't work. But some context. Going into UWorld, I had memorized, I'd say maybe about 15,000 Anki cards, so I had a pretty strong base, I know that. But I will say I was very surprised by how overwhelmed I was. So with that said, here are my first 10 UWorld blocks. So I did them all under time conditions, and you'll see my scores here on the side. And you also see that Test 3 and 4, I actually did 7 questions in Test 3 and 33 questions in Test 4, so this counted as its own block. But you'll see that the average of these first 10 blocks was about 70%. But the crazy part was, in each of these blocks, I was marking over like 25 to 30 questions. And by mark, I mean I was like unsure if that was the right answer. I was not confident. And so my first 10 UWorld blocks were at a percent of about 71.1. So that gives you an idea of where I first started. Now let's go to my last 10 UWorld blocks that I did. That was about 85.4%. So you'll see that over my studying course, I actually was able to up my percentage from 71 to an 85, which is actually really reassuring because it shows you that one, you can do significantly better than you think, and two, even if you start at a bad place or you start at a place that you think you can't get better from, you can. And I've seen people who start significantly lower than 70 who end up doing better than me even on step one. And so that's not to kind of put myself on a pedestal, but that's more to show you that improvement is possible. So let's talk about what worked for me to get me from 71.1 to 85.4, and hopefully this helps you. So what I learned was Anki, Anki, Anki. The reason why I felt like I had a good base to start, like 70% is actually a phenomenal score. I was very happy that that was my starting point, was because I was Ankiing a lot. So I had a pretty thorough knowledge bank already going in. I had around, as I said, 15,000 cards of knowledge. And then what I did was as I passed every UWorld block and I reviewed the questions, I would make flashcards about the questions I got wrong. What concept in that question was I not understanding? I'd make a question about it, add it to my deck, and there it was. Now it had to get integrated into my knowledge because I would do those cards every day. And the other thing that I learned was around week 4 of my studying, I started amping up the number of questions I was doing. So I know UWorld is overwhelming, so I would only do about 1 to 2 UWorld blocks a day. I don't know how anyone does more than that. But what I would also do, starting around week 4, I felt more confident because I had a bunch of Anki cards in my head. I had started seeing the way UWorld was asking questions. So at that point, I was like, I'm going to up my quantity. So I would do 1 or 2 UWorld blocks a day, but on top of that, during the dead times of the day, I would just be doing questions left and right. And I would be doing questions on Amboss, and I would be doing questions on Kaplan. But I would not be taking them nearly as seriously as I was taking UWorld. I'd pretty much be doing them without any time limit. I'd be doing them on, if I'm sitting at the dinner table, maybe I'd be doing them before dinner was getting ready. If I was walking outside for a bit, I'd maybe do 1 or 2 Amboss questions. And I would do the Amboss questions and the Kaplan questions in a feedback mode. So UWorld questions I was always doing under a time mode. And what I mean by that was I had 60 minutes to complete 40 questions, and after that I would see my score. But Amboss, I was doing it such that the question would show up, I would pick the answer, and if it was wrong, it would tell me it was wrong right away. Or if I picked it right, it would tell me it was right and explain it. And that was really good because it gives you instantaneous feedback. And so those were the 2 big things that really helped me. One, learn from your mistakes, which was every question I got wrong on UWorld, I made a flashcard about, and that flashcard knowledge was tucked away. And 2, around week 4, I had to up my quantity game because step 1 is not just, do you understand everything? It's also, have you seen all the different ways we can ask you this question? And the only way you can do that is by doing a lot more questions, right? And so I want to talk a bit about the way the Amboss questions are phrased. So this question is from an Amboss video, so it's totally out there for everyone to look at. But the point being, the way that I was doing these questions was Amboss would show this question, and then I would pick an answer. And if it was right, it would explain to me why it was right. And if it was wrong, it would explain to me why it was wrong, right? So I would be doing the Amboss questions in this format on my phone casually, and be able to get through like 60 to 80 a day, just because I'd be doing them. Like, you'd be so surprised at how much dead time you have in your day. Like, maybe I'm going downstairs, do a question then. Maybe I'm coming back upstairs, do another question. Maybe I'm waiting 5 minutes because I have to pick up my sister, do 3 questions, right? And this instantaneous feedback really helped me like start seeing more questions and also be like, oh, I can refine my process accordingly. One note that I will make is I never made flashcards based on the questions I got wrong in Amboss or in Kaplan. The flashcards I added to Anki were purely based off of the questions I got wrong in UWorld, not based on the questions I was getting wrong in Amboss and Kaplan. So overall, those 2 tips, making those flashcards and doing a bunch of questions, were huge for me, and I highly recommend all of you do that. But before you get too carried away, remember that quantity is not more important than quality. The only reason I was able to up the number of questions that I was able to do, right? So I was doing 2 UWorld questions, 2 UWorld blocks, and then 80 questions of Amboss. The only reason I was able to do that was because my knowledge bank in my head was thorough enough that I could go through questions and be like, boom, 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 kind of understand, and connecting the dots in my head because those dots already existed. Why did those dots exist in my head already? Because of Anki. Because I had been doing so many flashcards already, I already had discrete pieces of knowledge in my head somewhere. But I hadn't connected all of them. And that's what the point of the questions is. And that's what the whole point is of doing a lot of questions. But if those dots don't already exist in your head, doing 50,000 questions will not help you. It will actually hurt you because you won't understand the underlying themes. You won't understand the nuances. You won't understand what makes one answer right, one answer wrong in one situation, and another answer right and another answer wrong in an entirely different situation. So with all that being said, the 2 pieces of advice: Anki. If you aren't already Ankiing, do that, get your foundation in. But come dedicated, use Anki still, add in cards about questions you got wrong, but on top of that, also start upping your question game. I highly recommend it because the more questions you see, the more likely it is that you'll be able to go into your UWorld block and be able to pull out scores like this, as opposed to the earlier scores, which for me, I was marking 75% of the test. I was so unsure. And come the end of the UWorld, I was actually felt a little bit more confident. I could go in and say, okay, I kind of feel okay about this block. You're never 100% confident. I'm usually never anyway, but that's kind of the point of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, drop a like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you watched all the way to this part of the video, comment below and let me know what you would want to see in the next video. Do you want to see a score breakdown by subject? Because I can show you all my subject scores. So if you mention that, I will do it. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace.